I don't normally do a proper video on a weekend, particularly not a Sunday. And I don't normally do drama videos, but somehow here we find ourselves. Sean Patrick Fannon, who I kind of went to bat for, at least in terms of principle, saying that he should be given the benefit of the doubt and we should wait until something is proven against him. He's done a video on Facebook, on which he has me blocked, but sources, in which he talks about some of the stuff that happened, and in the comments in particular, he comes at me again, which strikes me as a little bit ungrateful, perhaps, at least, and there's things said that I feel I should reply to, so we'll start with the comments and then I'll go to his video. Sean's asked and challenged, when others were in similar controversies, you helped ostracize them, like, for example, Grimm, when he also wanted to have a conversation at the time. So why should we listen to you when you demonstrated you wouldn't listen to others when they sat where you are sat now? Which is a fair point, I think. And he responds, saying, to say Grimm and I have equivalent positions on these matters is frankly just plain incorrect. I do have a different perspective now than I did then, and I have greater empathy for what can happen there, but wrong is still wrong. Yeah, they're not equivalent positions, because you're accused of being a pervert in a non-consensual manner and sexual impropriety, whereas I stand accused of disagreeing with the extremes of a particular political orthodoxy, not even the goals necessarily of that orthodoxy, but the methods by which they go about it, the regressive, the anti-progressive elements in the things that they are arguing for. That, yeah, it's different. The things that you're accused of are really fucking serious, and the things that I'm accused of are what we used to call debate. Big difference. Sean's prodded a bit more about this, to which he answers, sorry, I'm not going to have this derailed by someone wanting to equate me to someone coming at this stuff from a very different, and in my humble opinion, very destructive fashion. Much empathy. So mature. Wow. Then there's a chorus of horseshit from the usual suspects. Grimm is an unrepentant bad actor, according to all the things I've ever read coming from his end of the net, and definitely not someone who wants to be an ally of diversity in the industry. The comparison is apples and oranges. Attacks on Grimm are against a bona fide enemy of progress. Attacks on Sean are on an ally who messed up and who is trying to do better. Sean's unwillingness to support a bad actor in no way invalidates what he said here in this video. You don't know me. You don't follow what I do. You don't try and talk to me. My door has always been open for debate and discussion. Other than a couple of brave people who got flamed into the ground for doing so, nobody has bothered to do so. You don't know me. You don't know what I think. Because you don't bother to fucking ask. Unrepentant. What do I have to be repentant for? There have been a few things that I have apologised for, that I genuinely am sorry for, and those are the things that I do apologise for, things that I'm actually sorry for doing. Apologies for things that you're not sorry for doing seem to me to be hollow and pointless. I still really have no idea what I'm supposed to have done other than to disagree, basically on tactics. And that's pretty much it. I'm not an ally of diversity for diversity's sake, but I am an ally of diversity. I don't think this is an industry, of all industries to pick, that is racist or sexist or whatever else. I don't think we need positive discrimination, and I think it's racist and sexist to implement it. So, this kind of haranguing, this hate mob that you unleash on anyone who disagrees with you, that's the kind of stuff I disagree with. The tokenism, the patronising tone of so much of it, that's what I disagree with there. So I'm not against diversity, just against diversity for diversity's sake. Do you follow? Because that's kind of cheap and patronising, like I said, and undermining of the whole goal and process of what we're supposed to want, which is everyone being treated equally, not as special because of some innate characteristic, whether that be treating them positively because of that characteristic or negatively because of that characteristic. And I'm also against censorship, which seems to be what really sticks into people's craw. An enemy of progress. Look, I'm sat here arguing for the same things that I always have, that I argued for during the Satanic Panic, that I argued for during the Vampire Panic in the 90s, and the whole trenchcoat mafia thing. The same thing I argued for against Jack Thompson, and yes, the same thing I argued for in Gamergate, and you have those people wrong. I'm sorry, but you do. It was not a harassment movement. And I can show you that if you bother to fucking talk to me. I fight for progress and to preserve the advances of progress that we have, such as free expression, which people like you threaten, even in this tiny corner niche that we all occupy. The fighting is so vicious because the stakes are so small, as they used to say about academia. And I didn't do anything remotely as serious as what Sean is being accused of. I disagreed with you on a political point, something I am perfectly willing to have a discussion about. You might be able to change my mind, but you won't even fucking try, will you? I don't even know what you mean by bad actor. I mock things that I think are stupid. I present my arguments and my points. You do the same. What's the problem? There shouldn't be one. God, you're frustrating.
Morning. Well, for some of you, it's not morning anymore. Listen, that is a huge part of what I feel like I've had to learn over the course of everything that's come about since May 1st.
His audio's shit. I've done the best I can without distorting it too much, but be careful if you turn your sound up to hear what he's saying, because my outro is likely to be significantly louder than that, and my voice when I speak is likely to be louder than that. I'm not going to put his whole video here, not just for reasons of copyright strikes that someone might maliciously do because of that, but just because there's a lot of it, and I only have so much time to waste today. So if you want to see the full context, you can go and find it. I'm not going to do him any favours by linking to it. I mean, he's got me blocked. I can't make sure I've got the proper link anyway. So there you go. Listen, really, Sean. You blocked me everywhere. You block anyone who disagrees with you everywhere. You joined in these kind of mobs that silence and attack and refuse to listen to people. So, what?
Most people in my situation, I suspect, would duck and cover. I mean, no matter what you think, no matter what you feel, no matter what I might have to say about the specific things, this is a day and a time when we are having conversations that need to be had.
We're not having conversations, Sean. I mean, this is me attempting to have a conversation, but I might as well be conversing with an empty chair, really. We're not having conversations about these things. We're having accusations and witch hunts and knee-jerk reactions, and that kind of describes society as a whole at the moment. Stimulus response without any cognitive thought in between to try and figure out what's going on, to negotiate nuance, to consider the broader implication. Oh, if you pull this bit out of society here, what's the impact there? You yourself are now the victim of and you still can't see it, that there is a problem there, that there needs to be a balance, and that we need to actually have this conversation that you're talking about, not a one-sided diktat. You still can't grasp that. despite being sucked into this Kafkaesque nightmare yourself.
And there are those who would say, well, it's hypocritical. Here's a guy who's been, as they would say, an SJW or a white knight or whatever, and he's out there saying all this crap, and then look what he's done, or look what he's been accused of having done. And at first, my instinct was to defend myself. And I did so vigorously, and I did so very elaborately. And that was tone deaf.
If it was tone deaf to anyone, it was tone deaf to the people that you have seen fit in the past to condemn in the court of public opinion with no defence. However, what it seems to me here, and in some of your comments on one of the threads, I think the EN World one, what it seems to me is that you're just trying to cling on to these progressive credentials and martyr yourself up on the cross, saying, oh, well, if I have to be fucked over in order for society to change, that's okay. I'll take it. I will bleed for you, my people. Eat of my lard, drink of my sweat. Completely ignoring the people that you're actually tone deaf to. Your first instinct was to defend yourself. Well, you should have some understanding for people like me, who've also gone at accusations combatively. Because you have a right to defend yourself, you have a right to face your accuser, one that has been taken away from you on EN World.
Those who wanted to believe me, those who want to believe in me, thank you, you did so. I love you, appreciate you for that. Then those who did not, only saw a privileged, white, cis, het male exert that privilege and add nothing useful or valuable to the conversation. Surely,
out of everything this must have taught you, it must be that you must understand now that as a man accused of sexual impropriety, you have no privilege whatsoever. You have no right to presumption of innocence. You have no right to defend yourself. Nobody has to present any evidence against you. It's just point and click and get the torches and pitchforks. So of anything, surely this must have disavowed you of this absurd misdefinition of privilege that these people use, if nothing else.
The conversation we need to have is, listen, make things better. All of us have a role to play, if we choose to accept it, in making things better.
Does losing your entire career, or the majority of your career, due to unbacked assertions about your behaviour, strike you as better? Does it strike you as fair? Does it strike you as just? Do you, as I do you want to strive for everyone to be treated equally, whether they're gay, straight, trans, black, yellow, green, whatever the fuck else? Or do you want to try and fight to marginalise people regardless of their talent because of the colour of their skin or the configuration of their genitals? Does it strike you as better if people are excluded because of the colour of their skin or the configuration of their genitals, or where they like to put their genitals? Does that strike you as fair? Does that strike you as better? Does that strike you as an improvement? Does a world where game creators, since we're talking about RPGs, but it goes much broader than that, feel pressurized and forced into acts of tokenism, both in terms of design and representation in their teams, in their media presentations and so on, and in their work, does that strike you as better? It doesn't to me. I think the world of creativity should be open to anyone to come in and create whatever they want, including things that I don't like. So does this atmosphere of repression and censorship and hate, and it's kind of a red guard-like hazing that goes on for any product and any person, does that strike you as better? Does that strike you as an improvement? Because to me, It doesn't. It sounds awfully like racism and sexism and censure. And that doesn't sound better. That doesn't sound like progress. That sounds like the opposite.
What are we going to do? What I'm asking you is, what are we going to do at the foundation? Because a lot of things that happen that are creepy or not right or whatever come from ignorance, come from not thinking things through, come from attitudes that are born of privilege or are born of assumptions of how things have always been versus how they need to be.
Let me let you in on a little historical secret. We're not always in a state of progress. Things aren't always moving forward. Things aren't always getting better. Over the longest arc, yes, generally that seems to be true. But there are falls, like the fall of the Roman Empire and so on. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the fall of Western civilization due to feminism or anything, because that's bollocks and a vast overstatement of the issues. But what I am going to say is that what you're calling progress is not, it's regress. Gaming has always been fantastically open to anyone and everything. It didn't matter who or what you were. If you were into games, you would be welcomed. Now, sure, women were and are still a minority in gaming. That makes them something of a novelty, and it's just in human nature to treat a novelty with curiosity. And a lot of guys get really excited when they meet a woman who's into the same things that they're into. That's just natural human behaviour, and you can't legislate that away. You can enforce certain boundaries, but we already really do that via friendships and social circles and through the law. So I don't really know what you're trying to do there. And we're also in a hobby that has a lot of socially awkward people, many of them on the spectrum or with mental disorders or other things. This isn't to say that gaming makes them that way, it's that we have traditionally provided a safe haven for people who don't fit in. And you're threatening to take away that acceptance and that opportunity for them to learn and grow how to be real social animals like the rest of us. That again sounds like regress. And you're trying to force people to act a certain way. And a lot of the things you're asking for are pretty normal and things we need to negotiate in society as a whole anyway. To try and enforce that is dangerous and threatens the foundations of what has made gaming good. Harassment and so on shouldn't happen, but there's a litter of babies that threaten to be thrown out with the bathwater.
No, all I want to do is have a conversation and ask you to think about things I've thought about and see what you think about those things. The first post of the week was, conventions are gatherings for fans. Come to make friends and enjoy what you love. Leave other expectations at the door. See, it's when we bring our agenda and our set of expectations into these spaces that we pre-establish where our head is. And if our head isn't in the most helpful and giving space, if we're only thinking about what we want, then we are bringing selfish ideas and selfishness to the space. And it's a shared space. Selfishness is not the right place to be.
There's a startling lack of self-awareness in this part of your comment, and you go on to talk about cosplayers and about people who go to conventions and things to hook up, but I want to address this point first. I'll go on to those. Yeah, it's a shared space, and the reason I call that an unself-aware example is that you have been amongst the kinds of people that strictly want to enforce what other people can and cannot do at these conventions. I mean, you even do it in the rest of your commentary here on this point. Yeah, you want to dictate what products are on display. You want to dictate what panels can be about. You want to harangue and dictate to people what they even make. You know, what costumes they make. I mean, PAX measures skirts now. Yeah, so even cosplayers who want to flaunt their bodies in some way are now being prevented because of people like you. You know, that shared space includes people that disagree with you, and you're constantly trying to force your particular outlook and your moral judgments onto everyone else in the exact same way, and often in the exact same way that the evangelicals used to when they called us all Satanists and bad influences and all the rest of it. Now, a cosplayer does come to be seen. I can't control my reaction to that in my own head, which seems to be what you're arguing for. You know, I can avoid creep shots, I can ask before taking a photo. These are things that I have control over. But whether I find the woman attractive or not, that's not something I have any control over. The boner knows what it wants. Right? I can override it with my conscious mind, but my reaction of attraction, of sexual reaction to a person, this is not something that is inside my control. It's instinct. It's reflex. What you choose to do with that reaction is up to you, but you seem to be pushing into the arena of policing people's thoughts. They don't hurt anybody. They are confined to the inside of my skull. And a man's skull is his own private kingdom. You then go on to talk about how conventions shouldn't be places to hook up or seek romantic interests. And yet you've done that yourself in the past. I can't say that I have. I had my eye open, but I never got anywhere, because face for radio, quite frankly. But I think this is not coming from a good place. When you go to a convention, it's a euphoric experience because you're finally surrounded by people who get you on some level. You've got something you can talk about together, some point of commonality, and this is true of just about any hobby you care to mention. And little wonder that a lot of people who are socially isolated or awkward or have hobbies that might be off-putting to potential mates, and this goes for men and women, little wonder that many of them look to these events as an opportunity to find a romantic partner. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong if they're out there looking for a sexual partner either. So long as they take no for an answer and aren't too creepy about it, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're making a moral judgment upon them now for doing so. I don't think it's any of your business whether people hook up at conventions, go back to their room, and fuck till the sun comes up. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I am a libertine. I think people should be free to have sex pretty much as they like, so long as nobody gets permanently hurt in a way that they don't want. And you come across as a moral Puritan when you speak against that. That it's just, it's not realistic, for one, and it's repressive, and it's regressive. People should be free to pursue romance and sex consensually how they please. This isn't rocket surgery.
And we can talk about the gender parts of it, but if we don't acknowledge that there is a gender inequality there, then we're not being realistic about the conversation. Men are the more likely predatorial people in this situation, and women are made to feel predated upon in all of these situations. One thing that has come out of this conversation in all the places that it has happened, I read time and time again how women, strong women, women that I've looked at as very strong, have admitted that every time they go into these spaces, they're terrified, or at the very least nervous.
Not to get all MRA on you, because I'm not one, I'm an egalitarian, but I think the actual statistics may well surprise you, but there are problems in drilling down to the actual statistics. For one thing, men are much less likely than women to report being predated upon. I mean, I've got stories. I have stories. So that's one aspect, but also a lot of what women do isn't even considered in the same light as when a man does it. I mean, to take one particularly egregious example, according to the law in a lot of countries, a woman generally can't rape a man unless she uses an object or a strap-on or something like that. Being made to envelop, being predated upon that way, rendered unconscious, drunk, drugged, that's not considered rape. If she mounts you, it's not considered rape, no matter what your state of mind or anything else. We've petitioned to change the law in the UK about this, to no success. The government has no interest in doing so. But things like this, and it's just an example, all right? And it's not the full breadth of everything. It's just an example of part of the problem. Yeah, that skews the statistics. So we've got societal attitudes, which means female predation isn't taken as seriously. Look at interactions between teachers and students, and you can see that. And legal definitions that ignore a lot of what happens to men. And in our specific circumstances, I think, gaming is skewed male. It's an interest that is primarily picked up upon by men, so women are going to be outnumbered. But the last aspect to this is, are their fears justified? Are they rational? And are the responses and so on proportionate? Okay, it's going to sound dismissive, but I'm going to take this to a ridiculous extreme. Okay? Just to make the point. But don't think that I'm necessarily completely ridiculing their worries. Okay? Okay? Good. Say that I had a fear of satellites, of man-made satellites. I had a crushing phobia that any time I stepped outside my house, I was at risk of a satellite falling on me. Would a convention therefore be forced to accommodate my paranoid fear by ensuring that whatever building the convention was held in was rated for impacts, wasn't directly under any satellite paths, anything like that? Would that make sense? No, I don't think it would. And alright, this is an extreme, absurd example, but reductio absurdum is a useful way of pointing out the flaws. So how big of a problem really is this? Anecdotes aren't data. We'd need to do a proper study to figure this out. What can we do? What are the drawbacks of doing it? I mean, you've witnessed now the drawbacks of just believing people. I mean, I don't know whether you're guilty or not. I'm willing to extend you the benefit of the doubt, but a lot of people aren't, are they? And yet that's a cornerstone of logic and of the legal system and of science, that you consider something false until it has been proven to be true. So what can we do? Does anything need to be done? There's always going to be a small amount of bad behaviour no matter what. Well, it doesn't mean we can't improve, but what are the negative impacts more broadly if we do stupid things, like many of these anti-harassment policies do? They become about more than harassment, and they place the conventions as a whole, the hobby as a whole, at risk in a lot of ways that I don't think people appreciate or are willing to listen. There's multiple angles to all of these things. They're nuanced discussions, and people want to reduce them down to something entirely black and white. But you can't make a good decision without hard data and assessing what the impact of what those decisions will be.
Obviously, I have a lot of work to do. When I am reading from people who I identify as powerful, strong voices in our culture, and women who are some of the strongest, most out there, empowered people I know, who tell me today that they still are afraid or they are still nervous about going to a convention because they might meet a guy who is acting like I used to act.
Is that a rational, fair, or proportionate response? Is it? I mean, you say you're one of those guys. Would you have ever raped someone? Would you have ever pushed it that far? I mean, I know you're accused of a lot. I take it you're going to say no. Or if you have done those kinds of things, you're going to say that they were wrong, which they are. But exactly how often is this happening? We just don't know. If I had to bet money, I would lay good odds that it happens a fuck of a lot less in the role-playing community than it does anywhere else, and that's something that we should be proud of. I would absolutely put money on that bet, that it happens at a lower level than in wider society. Just like they used to say that we were all killing ourselves all the time, and it turned out in a study that gamers were much less likely to commit suicide than anyone else. I have issues. I have severe depression, which results in occasional bouts of suicidal ideation, and I suffer from anxiety. And one of the reasons I really stopped going to conventions was due to anxiety that people like you, with no real idea of who I am or what I believe or what I think, but told nonsense by people like you, would use these conventions as an excuse to harangue or attack me or to try and get me thrown out. You know, conventions are costly. Stock, transport, lodging, all the rest of it. Yeah, it's a big financial risk for a small company, especially a sole trader like myself. And all it's going to take, if all it's going to take is one asshole to say, oh, that product is in violation of our anti-harassment policy because you can see cleavage on the cover. Or if someone's just going to point and accuse me of doing something and they're just going to be believed, even though I haven't done anything, and then I get thrown out on my ear, I've got no recourse, and all that money is lost, and I'm fucked. And this is what happened to the Honey Badger Brigade at Calgary Expo during Gamergate. So, you know, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that this kind of thing could happen. Are you going to accommodate me? Are you going to give me some kind of protection in the same way that you're going to offer protection to these women and accommodate their every whim in order to chase down that some minute fraction of 0.1% of actual shitheads? So you're going to go out of your way to protect me because of my issues? Or are you just going to say I've got privilege or something?
We can actually make these safe spaces, welcoming spaces, inclusive spaces for everyone. And I don't even just mean the physical space. I mean online. I mean everywhere. If a woman posts a cool picture or whatever, you don't need to be talking about what she looks like in terms of how it makes you. No, you can say, "Hey, nice cosplay." Wow, cool, whatever. But
inclusive is going to have to include people that you disagree with. It's going to include people like me who have an unrepentant love of cheesecake art and things like that, and believe it to be an important and integral part of the history of the genre, of games, books, films, all of it. I love me some trash fiction. It's gonna have to include conservatives. Is that what you mean? And it's gonna be safe and inclusive for everyone? I'm not conservative. I'm so far on the left compared to just about anybody I know. But anarchistic, which seems to be where I come into conflict with you. I'm small L libertarian. People like you seem to be very authoritarian, trying to stamp a particular way of doing things onto other people. But are you going to welcome the right wing in? If someone does a game, I don't know, on the theme of abortion. I mean, Lewis Porter Jr. did a D20 supplement about it, about all the conflicts and so on around it, which he tried to do a kind of balanced view on it, and fairly represent the views of both sides, and he got fucking harangued for that. You know, he wasn't making a judgment either way, but then that seemed to be what triggered people. So I don't know, if someone made a game where you play the ghosts of aborted babies or something, I mean, who the fuck knows? Would you welcome that into your space? Or would you then decree that that's making people feel unsafe? But then in doing so, aren't you making the creators of this hypothetical game feel unsafe? Where does it stop? Does it stop? Should it stop? Or should we all be accommodating of each other, regardless of our points of view and so on, and focus like we used to on the fact that we all like games and fight over editions?
right now, we have finally gotten women to really open up. We've finally gotten the marginalized of our culture to open up and start saying things. Me Too, Time's Up. These are things that are happening all over. But it's the women and the minorities of our culture, those who are not the privileged of our culture, are finally starting to feel like maybe they could say something. Maybe there's enough people who are willing to listen to them that if they say something, they'll be heard. We have to listen.
You can listen without having to agree with whatever spurious nonsense some lack-witted mooncalf comes out with. If a woman mentions the patriarchy, capitalised, I hear invisible space lizards, and I start imagining them as David Icke, because there is no shadowy cabal of men controlling the world. If there were, men would be having a damn sight better time of it than they actually are. We've had full legal equality in most first world nations for really a long time at this point, getting on for 50 years. I refuse to be held accountable for the alleged misdeeds of my ancestors, who I don't know enough about to be sure whether they, as individuals, did anything wrong. I don't believe in original sin. I'm an atheist. Okay, so people from my country may have invaded another country and colonised it several hundred years ago, but what the fuck does that have to do with me? I didn't do it. I treat everyone as they come, fair and equal. It's got fuck all to do with me. What you don't seem to understand is that you've overshot that the progressive, though they're not very progressive at all, the progressive left has control of academia and social and media institutions, by and large. They set the tone of the culture. At the moment, the right in the US has control, but societally, they don't. It's weird. You've got this extreme right in government and this extreme pseudo-left in every other sphere. And they're now holding the whip hand, and you've experienced the sharp end of that yourself. We have minorities making the mistakes that the majorities did in the past. We have extreme racism amongst the people who are supposed to be against racism. We have extreme sexism amongst the people who are supposedly fighting against sexism. And so it seems to go throughout all of these arenas. And that's probably, if I really think about it, because we've dealt with most of the issues. And all that's left is petty bullshit. Trivial bullshit, as Ayaan Hirsi Ali put it. And a continuing encroachment and a stricter and stricter enforcement of people's moral judgments onto others in a way that we've only really seen in religion and in extreme ideological orthodoxies, such as communism, or at least so-called communism under Stalin. That's worrying. They're making the same mistakes. They are being racist, they are being sexist, they are judging people like me on the basis of the colour of my skin, the fact that I like to fuck women, and the fact that I identify as the same gender as the body I'm in. And they will judge me on all of those things and assume that I've got privilege, despite knowing fuck all about me as an individual. And this is all the things that the left, my left, used to fight against. And it's all being embraced and enforced by people like you, who are really the red guard of this whole new paradigm that we find ourselves in, this panopticon social media big brother. Step out of line, even slightly, and the purity spiral tightens and tightens all the time, and you're fucked, and no one will listen to your side, as you're experiencing, and yet you've learned fucking nothing.
We don't need to fight. We need to listen. Because if you're not that person who's marginalized, if you're not that person who's been hurt, if you're not that person who is going into conventions or social media spaces or wherever with a genuine fear that you are going to be attacked, picked on, abused, berated, denied in some way, then you're not listening, and you're not being fair.
Fair is treating people equally. It means not privileging their ideas just because they're black or because they're a woman. And your argument denies my capacity for reason and for empathy. And that's dehumanizing. Right? The mere fact that you are black or a woman or gay or transgender or whatever else lends what you say in no more authority than anybody else. And by that same token, I could argue that they don't understand my point of view, or they can't understand my point of view, which leaves us at a stalemate. But if we accept that we can examine evidence, consider what people are saying, seeing if it's believable, and weighing what they say and claim on the evidence, then we can have a back and forth, then we can have progress, then we can empathize with one another, and we can navigate to what's actually true. Why is that so hard?
But I'm also going to continue to be a part of this conversation, and I'm going to continue to use whatever voice I have, whatever platform I enjoy, to make sure that we have this conversation, that we don't stop having this conversation, and that all of my friends are welcome, that all of the people that I could possibly impact are impacted in a positive way and are not hurt and are not made to feel marginalized or objectified or viewed as something other than just a fellow person, a fellow human being welcome in the space.
What you seem to want for yourself, for your friends, for those who are still willing to talk to you, is exactly the kind of accommodation and tolerance that you have refused me, that you have refused many other people. People you have demonized, misrepresented, out and out lied about. You don't want to be treated in the exact same way that you have treated anyone who has disagreed with you, even slightly, on anything even close to any of these topics. Now, it's really tempting to just tell you to suck it up and tangle with the monster that you helped create and to get fucked. It really is. You have really fucking enraged me, as have your cheerleaders. I'm normally a pretty chill guy, to be honest, despite my reputation. But I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm still fucking angry at you and the people attacking you, and many of the two-faced people who are supporting you. They're willing to outcast people who just have different political opinions or opinions on tactics. And yet they're willing to still accept you with everything that you've been accused of. Yeah, but I have principles, and those principles say that, in my eyes, you are innocent until proven guilty. And I want the kind of treatment that you've had to stop, so I'm willing to give you, to extend to you, the courtesies that you have previously denied me. I'm going to offer, again, yet again, anyone on your side of this morass of arguments who wants to talk to me, actually talk, discuss, listen, that thing you were on about earlier. My door is open. Come, have the debates, listen to the other side. Try to persuade me, I will try to persuade you. Have the conversation, breach your echo chambers, and that invitation is open to you as well, Sean. We could do a stream or something together. That gives you, or would give you, a platform to a lot of people that disagree with you. So why not use that platform? This whole thing just gets worse and worse and more puritanical, and every day, in every way, in every walk of society, I feel justified in the stances that I have taken, and I get more entrenched. Maybe that's because I'm not being exposed to ideas from your side, but that's not generally through my choice. It's through your choices. You've put me in an echo prison, and I never wanted to be in one. Zang.